Hello and welcome. I'm back with another video. Keeping busy here at We Are Change Melbourne. We have a terrific show for you today. We have a very brave and courageous doctor, William Bay. So let's cross over to that interview now. It is an honour to welcome to the show Dr. William Bay, who was suspended 10 days after exposing medical corruption at an Australian Medical Association conference. He has dragged AHPRA, the Medical Board of Australia, and even the state of Queensland into a legal fight to get the decision overturned. Thank you for appearing on the show. How is the battle currently progressing?
Yeah, it's going great. Thanks, Jeff. It's taking a little bit longer than I expected. But a lot of wars do take a long time, and we certainly are in a spiritual war for good versus evil here. And we're also in a legal war, of course, with myself versus AHPRA, the medical board, and the state of Queensland even. It is a war that's ongoing and still happening right now, because my matter is at this very moment before the High Court of Australia, where the justices, the full bench of the High Court, are deciding whether their colleagues did or did not err in their decision to throw out my original application award costs against me.
This has had a very serious impact on your livelihood. Your actions were very honourable, and you upheld the Hippocratic Oath, where many doctors failed to do so. Despite the backlash, it must be very good having a clear conscience.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, that is all what it's about in my mind. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. I submit to God, the God of Isaac and Abraham. And I have found that by fighting for truth and freedom and for patient rights and for freedom of speech and democracy, actually, there's many things all tied into this case. It's actually very liberating, believe it or not. To fight for liberty is a very liberating experience. And I'm very happy. Even though I'm not as financially well off as I have been previously, what I've discovered, Jeff, is that nothing is more valuable than your soul or your liberty or all of those things combined. And I feel exceptionally wealthy and powerful now, actually.
Yes, that's very good to hear, and very positive, that thought process in regards to that. I'd imagine there would be many doctors that are tormented by their decisions being bound by the medical establishment and unethical practices. Would you agree?
Precisely. That is the very reason I think that the majority of doctors and other health professionals are not standing up for patient rights and not speaking out against the menace of AHPRA, because they are locked in a prison of their own making, even though they may not realize it, by valuing their job security over their principles. They are committing themselves to forever be slaves to whoever holds the key to that prison, which in this country is AHPRA, who regulate all the health practitioners. So as long as they keep submitting and bowing down to AHPRA, they're never going to be free, which is a disgrace, not just for their patients, but also for themselves, because they'll never be able to be happy as slaves. You show me one slave that was ever happy, Jeff, and I'll show you me jumping over the moon. It really doesn't exist. And so I think that we need to realize that freedom is the basis of not just health and safety, but people's happiness as well.
Very well said. And having medical practitioners bound by these practices and knowing full well that they haven't got their patients' best interests at heart, it undermines all their education and everything that they
absolutely
joined the medical establishment for, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. There's no point in studying a multitude of textbooks and reading all the latest medical journals or being aware of all the facts if those facts are not going to be shared with your patients. I mean, what's the point of that? But that's exactly what AHPRA has done. They have prohibited the free sharing of medical information with patients, which is a disgrace, which is a tragedy, which is a crime, I might add. And because of that, they have denied all Australians the right to informed consent, because you can't have informed consent if you're literally prohibited by law to not tell the other side of the story. it's a similar case happening all around the world. I see in New Zealand, another doctor, Dr. Bailey, by coincidence, is being looked at having her medical license deregistered because they have a similar ruling, surprisingly, in this globalist world where they are allowed to talk about
your case, because what's taking place is downright immoral, and we need to put a stop to this immediately. You were very bold in calling out the Chief Medical Officer, Paul Kelly. He is a prolific liar and an absolute devil doer with some of his actions, isn't he?
Well, at the AMA conference on the 29th of July, 2022, I stood up to him and in front of him, even though he was on a Big Brother telescreen, and stood in front of all the leadership of the AMA, that is the Australian Medical Association, at their conference, their national conference in Darling Harbour, Sydney. And I told them all that, Professor Paul Kelly was a gaslighter. He was lying to my colleagues and to the Australian people, and I warned them that we needed to stop hurting our patients. Wins in the federal court as well. Together, we will win.
Yes, well, you've got the right thought process, and it's all very promising. We are starting to see the media backpedal with some of their statements and retreating on their stance when it comes to certain matters regarding lockdowns, border closures, and other restrictions that were implemented. This is a vindication for a lot of people who were speaking out, isn't it?
It is a vindication. However, we also must be aware, like we always should, that the mainstream media often seeks and does deceive people. And I think they are, even now, being deceptive in what they're doing by vindicating people like me. I'll tell you why. Two reasons. First of all, they are now putting out this message that people like me were right about the jabs because they want to cover up the truth even now. And the truth is that people like me, doctors and nurses, still to this day, are still legally not allowed to criticize the jab. So if they get it out in the media that the mandates have gone away, people can go back to work, you don't need to have a jab, everybody's happy and free again, that is a lie. It's not true. I'm still suspended. I know many doctors and nurses are still suspended for years. Dr. Hobart for 2 years, Dr. Miley Trim for 2 years. There are many others. Even today, I'm still not allowed by law. Even I'm challenging the law to criticize the jab. And the second reason that I believe the media is being deceptive and now, praising us for our previous foresight is because I believe that they are probably taking time to consolidate their power, to consolidate the narrative, to draw in a breath before exhaling more tyranny and deception on us. I think they're getting ready for the next scam. And before they do that, they need to let the market cool a little bit.
Very well said. I believe that's what's taking place as well. It allows for people to drop their guard and then they become very complacent. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, they're ramping up their next tactics and planning the next wave of tyranny. That was very good, the way you expanded on that. And many politicians have investments in pharmaceutical companies. Therefore, money is the driving force in a lot of these decisions, as well as ramping up this new world order. That's extremely unethical, isn't it?
Well, the unethics come from valuing things other than human beings. Yes, these organizations, they value protocols over lives. We've seen that in the case of Dazzle, the 16-year-old girl in Singleton, who is suffering from a damage to her lungs and cannot get a transplant because she refuses to take 4 jabs. It's a disgrace. So they're valuing protocols, compliance to the jab over human lives, and the globalist organizations like the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization and the United Nations and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations, they're all seeking to impose control on Australians. And I reject their attempts to control us because we are not citizens of Bill and Melinda Gates. We are not citizens of the United Nations. We're not even citizens of the World Economic Forum. Of course we're not. We are citizens of the Commonwealth of Australia. And as citizens of this country, we have a duty to follow the law of Australia and we have a duty to protect Australia. And that is not what is happening when organizations like APRA seek to restrict our freedom of speech our informed consent by using the very unconstitutional and illegal laws, that being the Health Practitioner Regulation National Law, which is a law that they use to enslave everybody in Australia, including the patients. And yet, this law, when properly looked at, is not even a law at all. It doesn't exist on any parliamentary websites of Australia. It is unable to be found anywhere outside of APRA's website. They think they are the law. And I am bringing them to account in the High Court. And I do hope and believe, actually, that the High Court will rule in my favour eventually, because it's their job to uphold the law of Australia. And I cannot see how they can allow APRA and the state of Queensland to get away with these national laws, which are unconstitutional, because, Jeff, there are only two laws in the Constitution: state laws and federal laws. There are no national laws. That is a fact. So how can you argue with that very clear fact? We'll see.
Exactly right. They have blood on their hands. And if you look at the VAERS website, a lot of the jab-related injuries aren't being accurately reported. Some people even say less than 1%. And when people have expressed what they're suffering through on social media, they've had their accounts locked down. YouTube channels have been censored. So people can't even explain what they've suffered to try and warn others. Very diabolical, isn't it?
Yes, so we are in an information war, as Alex Jones always warned us about. We are in a prison planet, and in this psychological war, this fifth generation warfare, they are using information against us. And that is why they are seeking to censor us and to bring in the misinformation and disinformation bill, because they know that the weapons in this war are facts, are opinions, are shares, are likes. So that's why they're trying to cut our supply lines in this war. And that is why the good people of Australia must push back against this misinformation and disinformation bill, because if they cut off our ammunition in this war, well, it's going to be pretty hard to win, isn't it?
It certainly is. And independent media is vital, being able to provide other aspects of what's taking place so people can make a more informed decision when it comes to their health and other very important matters. But when they're only given one side and one side of a narrative, that's when people can fall into traps. And,
yes.
And that can be very hazardous.
Yeah, I think a lot of my colleagues, my fellow doctors, are victims as well. I think that whereas I thought even just a few days ago, all my colleagues knew about the dangers with the jabs, I now actually have come to a more evolved conclusion that my fellow doctors, some of them are deceived as well. They have been gaslit. Yeah, like people like Professor Paul Kelly, the Chief Medical Officer of Australia, like Dr. John Gerard, the Chief Health Officer of Queensland, like information they have received from medical journals, from publications, from conferences, from grand rounds in hospitals. If you don't actually go actively seeking out the truth and just passively sit back and let other people and doctors tell you what to think, I can see why my colleagues, especially some of my junior colleagues, would have been deceived by the same brainwashing that the general public has received. So whilst I believe a lot of doctors need to be held accountable for what's happened to this country, there must be some room for compassion as well, because we are all victims to this scamdemic in one way, shape or another.
We certainly are. And we know about the Rockefeller Medicine, the crime syndicate. They took over the medical industry, starting off as traveling snake oil salesmen, having paid shills spruiking a lot of their products, and put representatives on medical boards, offered large sums of money, corrupting the medical industry and selling poison disguised as medicine. This is a huge problem, isn't it?
Yes, and if you look into the history, you'll find that it's very, very interesting, because in 1913, two very significant events happened in the United States. And the United States is important because they have a lot of influence in the world, and they became the preeminent superpower in the world after First World War. So just before the start of the First World War in 1913, two very important, actually three, but I won't talk about the third one today. The two very important events happened. One was the creation of the Federal Reserve in the United States on Jekyll Island. They created a bank, one bank to rule them all and control the money supply. And as some very evil people said, it does not matter naught who controls the country. What matters is who controls the money supply. So they did that. They got control of the country. They got control of the money in 1913, but they also got control of people's health and minds in 1913. This is what a lot of people don't know, is that in 1913 in Texas, in Austin, there was the creation of the SFMB. What is that? That's not a Russian spy organization, but it is the Federation of State Medical Boards, the FSMB. This FSMB is a private corporation that advises all the medical regulatory authorities in America, like the medical schools, like the prestigious universities and hospitals, like APRA, members of APRA over here in Australia. So this very influential body is basically controlling the thought processes and the medical rules and protocols that are enslaving people like Dazzle with her lung transplant and people like me who are suspended for speaking out publicly. That is why we're suffering, because the world was basically corrupted in 1913, and we're still suffering those effects to this very day.
We certainly are. And even if you look at the FDA banned list and TGA, there's many medicines that can provide full body healing and that are very powerful, but they've banned those. Some people say that's a calculated effort to depopulate the planet by restricting people from having the liberty to heal themselves. This is an enormous issue as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in libertarian thought processes. I believe that the individual should be the ultimate truth teller. The individual should be the ultimate judge of what is right and wrong for them. I believe that all humans should have the freedom to do absolutely anything they want, as long as they're not harming somebody else. That's my personal philosophy. And so with that philosophy comes the idea that absolutely you can choose what goes into your own body. That's why I reject mandates. That's why I reject forced jabs. That's why I reject them even selling them or marketing them as vaccines when they're not really vaccines, but genetically modified organisms. And that's why I'm a supporter of all natural therapies, even though I don't believe in some of them. I don't care. Like, it's not my right to tell you or members of your audience what they should or should not be putting into their body, as long as what they're doing doesn't harm anybody. And how could it? Because it's going into your own body. Then why would I seek to control you? Or why would I seek to stop you from using homeopathy or chiropractic or naturopathy? I mean, what this pandemic has shown over the last 2-3 years, that perhaps the most dangerous of all these alternative medicines is Western medicine. That's what this pandemic has shown us, and that is really another sad thing that this scandemic has done. It has lessened the authority and the credibility and the trust in Western medicine, when Western medicine can actually provide a lot of good benefits. That's why I was a doctor and I took up the job, even though it myself had a lot of concerns about the medical system. I decided to do the best that I could within a potentially corrupted system. However, we have certainly we've doubled down, we've tripled down on all the illegality and corruption and tyranny in the Western medical system since 2020. And now it really is a faint shadow of itself. And yeah, the alternative remedies, they will play a role in healing the human body. I think prayer plays a role in healing the human body. But foundationally, just things like food, water, exercise, sunshine, and freedom, personal happiness, relationship, spirituality are the key ingredients to a happy life. And I think it's disgusting, again, that entities like APRA can issue laws. They can send people to jail for up to 3 years if people like me say these things that I just said. They will take action against doctors if they dare to say that there's like a role for vitamin D, or even you should stop eating less sugar. It's crazy.
You have a very logical and sensible approach to medicine and healing. It's really refreshing to see, and it gives people hope that there are doctors out there that do have their heart in the right place and do look after the patients and want the very best for them. A lot of doctors are very quick with the prescription pad, and they don't recommend speaking to a naturopath or holistic healer looking at natural therapies, which should be the first point of reference. Like you said, diet, nutrition, and other important factors. That should always be taken into consideration instead of writing out these prescriptions just so they can get repeat business and increase their profit margins, because that's what seems to be most important.
Yeah, and perhaps, doctors, Western doctors would still make a lot of money and still get a lot of business if we were looking after the patient's best interest. What a crazy idea. I think the doctors would get a lot of trust, respect, and repeat business if the patients truly felt that and saw that the doctors were working in their best interests. And to work in a patient's best interest, the first thing all doctors in Australia have to do now is stand with people like me who demand the right to informed consent, to giving the patient-doctor relationship the priority. Now, that actually means that doctors need to fight against APRA to defend their patients, because that's what it's come down to. Because the law as it stands, that illegal national law, says that the patient is not the most important thing anymore. It's public confidence, the greater good. So doctors are going to have to choose now between a communist totalitarian regime, which is APRA, or they're going to have to choose, are they on their patient's side? Now, I think the choice is pretty easy. And I'm a little bit shocked that so many doctors have chosen to go with APRA and the communist regime. However, there's still time. There's time for my colleagues to turn around and to say, you know what, bugger you. I've had enough of you telling me what to do. My patient matters most to me. I'm not going to listen to you anymore. And there's no need to, because again, APRA does not even have the law on their side. There is no national law. Doctors of Australia, there are only state and federal laws. You do not need to comply. Go with your patients, please.
Exactly. And it should be a very moral decision that they make, and they should be obligated to take that action. But a lot of people aren't willing to make the same sacrifices that you have made when they've gone through all their schooling and then gone to university, to willing to put that all on the line to do the right thing. Many people are too interested in traveling on their yachts, their luxury cars, and their beautiful homes and their fantasy lifestyles. That becomes more important than the patient's best interests. And it goes against the whole business model. There's no money made in a cure. If somebody was cured, they're not going to come back and get those prescriptions filled. So a lot of them are out to feather their own nest, unfortunately, aren't they? It seems.
Well, actions speak louder than words. And so with the lack of doctors sticking up for patient rights in Australia, a lack of doctors speaking out, you saw all those doctors walk out on me when I was trying to educate or debate with them at the AMA National Conference in 2022. So their actions have demonstrated that they are, for the most part, currently siding with APRA. We need their actions now to speak very loudly. Stand with me on August 16th outside every APRA office. And if we get dozens or hundreds of medical professionals, nurses, chiropractors, whoever they are, because we're all allegedly regulated by this monster called APRA, if they stand with me on August 16th, we will show APRA that we are, in fact, much stronger than them. And you know what? We are. There's 825,000 health practitioners regulated by APRA. Can you believe that? We are so strong. It's unbelievable. So even though APRA have their 60 lawyers or whatever the exact number is, it doesn't matter. We've got almost 1 million souls on our side, and we just need even 3% of them to stand up, and we will win.
Yes, that's the right attitude to take. It must have been quite deflating to see your colleagues not stand in solidarity when you stood up and made that courageous move to do what's right.
I understand that doctors are afraid. I've had a large personal sacrifice in going through this journey myself. So nobody likes to lose their personal relationships, their colleagues' respect, or their houses, or their job, or their income, or for me, everything, because APRA won't even allow me to do volunteer work. But again, what I'm demonstrating, hopefully, to my colleagues is that you can lose all of that and you can still win. I am winning because I've never been so happy, proud of myself, and discovered that the true wealth in one's life is not in material possessions. It is, in my opinion, subservience to God, serving God serving a higher purpose, and that is a great beauty that no amount of money can ever achieve. So yeah, join with me, Doctors of Australia. You will win as well.
And you're positive that you will have a victory and your practicing certificate will be reinstated. If that becomes the case, will you be seeking compensation for the turmoil, anguish, and lost finances that you've had to suffer through?
Yes, whilst it's true that when I win my High Court case, it will not give me a single dollar in compensation, because I'm merely trying to make constitutional what is currently unconstitutional, and returned informed consent to my patients. After that, after I prove that AHPRA has been in fact acting illegally, yes, I will then be seeking compensation from these entities. Yes, but in the meantime, if anybody would help me, would like to help me continue in this fight for our informed consent, for our democratic rights, they can go to qpp.life, LIF for freedom E/donate, and help me in this fight for medical freedom.
Wonderful. I strongly urge everybody to do that. We'll put all the information in the description so people can follow those channels. And if everybody emails through,
I was just going to say, and even if it's just $2, that's enough for me, because getting those little donations is very psychologically and spiritually encouraging, because it shows that I have support out there, and it shows that the Australian people want what I'm doing. So even if it's a very small amount, don't worry. I appreciate every single cent of it, especially when you don't have a job at all. Every little bit counts.
Yes. And protesting with several nurses, they've really experienced their fair share of tyranny as well, being restricted to what they can say on social media and being hauled up before their own boards and tribunals. They're not exempt from any of these bullying tactics either, are they?
No, and in fact, I've had several nurses working quite closely with me in fighting back against AHPRA. One of my friends and colleagues, registered nurse Beulah Martin, she was suspended by AHPRA, still is actually. Her length of suspension must be approaching almost 2 years as well, unfortunately. And she did the best she could to fight in the courts. Ultimately, she wasn't successful. It is a very difficult and long journey, but yeah, the nurses have been absolutely essential and important in this fight for justice, and will continue to be.
Yes, it's a beacon of hope for many people, and it restores a lot of faith within a lot of medical practitioners, knowing that they are looking out for patients and they're not just going to toe that line, even when it's going to be disastrous to people's health. So we need more people to make those decisions. A lot of people are bound by financial restraints and they're afraid of the backlash. The mainstream media can be relentless, can't they, with trying to tarnish and smear someone's reputation?
Absolutely. What I've noticed is that whenever I've had a court victory, and there have been several, the newspapers don't want to talk to me. But when I get in trouble or get arrested or lose a part of the legal process, you know, they're my new best friend. So unfortunately, yeah, the media seems to love a bad news story, and that's why sometimes there's not a lot of articles written about me, because I'm winning. So yeah, never fear, everyone. Even though it may not look like we're winning, sometimes it's a trick. That itself is a psyop, because they don't give oxygen to the victories that not just me, but other doctors and nurses and the general public have as well. So that's why shows like yourself and groups like yourself that you represent, Jeff, are so important, because you are the ones that are getting the message out, acting in place of the media, and giving hope to so many people. Because without the messengers like yourself, then how would anybody know that we're winning?
Thank you. That's right. And when you look at the measures that were implemented, it defies all common sense and logic, denying people the right to access gyms and exercise, even restricting people's time in the sunlight, which people know is very important to have that, and the application of masks, restricting people's breathing, and this in a whole combination adds to the sickness, doesn't it?
Yes, there is a reason that human beings go outside. We go outside for fresh air, for exercise, for sunlight, vitamin D, for social interaction, seeing their friends and family, not just for parties, but also for caring for our other people. And because the government restricted a lot of those things with these very unlawful and hideous mandates, which I think were the most outrageous thing I've ever seen, they hurt the health of so many people, almost every Australian, because as soon as you lock a person in jail, in prison, which home detention, you are hurting their health. And the sad thing is that every doctor knew that. We were taught that in medical school, that your health is not just, your physical body, it's your social determinants of health, it's your financial health, people losing jobs, can't go to work, that type of thing. And it's your spiritual health as well, your emotional health. So even just by locking people in their homes with these lockdowns, it was an absolute disgrace. Only criminals lose their liberty. So what the Australian government was effectively doing was telling every Australian, you are all criminals. And that we didn't reject it, but it should have been rejected because that was the crime of the century. The lockdown was absolutely unbelievable, and it should never happen again. They did not have the power to lock innocent Australians in their homes, and we should never have accepted that. Hopefully we won't accept that again.
That's right. And we've seen the endless streams of propaganda, trust the science, stay indoors, do as you're told. It was virtually psychological warfare, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, we definitely are in a fifth generation warfare. We've had nuclear bombs prior. In the fourth generation of warfare, we had machine guns and chemical warfare, maybe in third generation. Before that, there was, just basic gunpowder and then swords and spears and arrows. So we are now fighting with information, and people get their information misled when they use fear against us. So that was their great weapon, was fear. So I would encourage everybody next time, whatever it may be, whether it's another virus or a nuclear threat or aliens or whatever the next scam is that they're going to try and scare us with, don't be afraid. Whatever it is, do not be afraid. And I would encourage Australians to choose liberty over safety. We've got to choose liberty over safety, because if you choose safety over liberty, you shall receive and deserve neither, the saying goes. And that's exactly what's happened to this country. I hope we all learn from it. And next time the scandemic comes, we choose our freedom instead.
Yes, that's right. Sadly, a lot of people are very absent-minded, and they're quick to go back to their sporting games, their movie theatres, and they forget about the tyranny to some degree. And the government preys on that, don't they?
They do, and that's again another reason why the media is, exposing the truth now, because they want people to even heal and to forget about all the crimes and trauma that's happened, and to think and pretend that everything is okay. But again, I think this is just a period of consolidation. This, in my opinion, emailing your members of parliament, attending conferences, getting the word out, liking, subscribing, sharing. If people were to channel their rage into committing to share 100 articles per day, imagine how much that could change the world. So don't just sit there stewing in your chair or in your school, getting angry at the New World Order. I would encourage you to take local action. You can change the world. It starts with you.
This has been a very powerful broadcast. You've helped so many. Very inspirational and motivational as well. I'll be following your battle. I wish you continued success in the future. Let's hope to see you get some results, and it'd be lovely to see you back at your practice once again, helping people and providing such a valuable service. Thank you once again for appearing on the show, Doctor.
Thanks, Jeff, and God bless.
Wonderful. Well, that does it for today's show. I hope everybody supports Dr. William Bay. He's a very good man. But I'll catch you on the next episode of the We Are Change talk show, where we expose corruption. Until then, goodbye.